Good morning, it's February 5th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. I want to talk about the Democratic National Committee elections in this podcast, but first I got to touch on another subject. The fashionistas in New York and Washington and other major urban areas are calling out Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem for her attire. They were shocked that she was out there wearing a cowboy hat and jeans and riding on a horse. They said she's just playing at being a cowboy. Well, they don't seem to know who she is. She's been the governor of South Dakota. And while she's there, she grew up on a ranch. She's been a working rancher her whole life. She's rode a horse all her life. She's had a cowboy hat her whole life. But that would be foreign to them because they don't understand how anybody could do that. They think the urban cowboys they see hanging around the bars are the people that should be wearing those. I'm reminded I went to a high school graduation of my grandson last spring. It was up in Beaver Creek, Oregon, a pretty rural community, and it was the best high school graduation I've been to. It only lasted 53 minutes, but the principal had jeans on under his robes, and the head of the school board was a woman who also wore a cowboy hat. So wake up out there, people. People do wear those things, and that's how they grew up, and they're not all trying to be fashionistas like you. Anyway, I have to turn back to the Democratic Party today, and I continue to be amazed at how they utterly fail to comprehend what happened in November and why they lost. Sure, they won the deep blue states in New York, Illinois, and California, and some others, but even in those states, the margin of victory was smaller. In the 7 key swing states, they lost. So what was their response to losing in November? Certainly it called for new leadership and hopefully new ideas. One would think they would realize the country was tired of the left-wing woke ideas that dominated the party's platform in recent years. But you'd be wrong. After the Democratic National Committee meeting this past weekend, they did elect new leadership, and judging by who they elected, they've not learned anything. They seem to be doubling down on their ideas and blaming the messaging as the problem. They believe the public wants their policies, they just don't fully understand them because they've not communicated them well enough. The new chair of the Democratic National Committee is Ken Martin. He had previously led the Democratic Party in Minnesota. He would be a new face, and most people won't know who he is, but he's been around liberal politics for most of his life. And I'll admit that he's more moderate than his key opponent for the position, Ben Wickler, who's pretty far out there. Martin has called for an investigation into what went wrong in November. A smaller investigation would be about what went right. Now, Martin's an insider and someone who will be a major resistant player when it comes to Donald Trump. He and other key leaders in the Democratic Party have still not read the room very well and acknowledge they're out of step with the American public. Focusing on social issues instead of the economy and immigration left them losing support and failing to connect with voters. And I thought it was interesting that his major opponent, Ben Wickler, from Wisconsin, had the support of House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, of New York Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California. These are 3 people who have not figured out why they lost, and I don't think they ever will. As one of the vice chairs, they elected David Hogg. This one stuns me. Mr. Hogg is best known as a survivor of the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. He became a loud anti-gun activist. No problem there. He went to Harvard University and at age 24 is the Gen Z person to be elected to the Democratic Party leadership. But what will his position be on issues that the American public care about? Well, here's some of the things he's passionate about. In 2020, he called for legalizing all drugs. That would mean heroin should be legal, fentanyl should be legal, and just about anything else you want to abuse yourself with. But he was not done. He also called for a 100% tax on any income over $1 billion. He said, and I quote him, "I don't think anyone should ever have over $1 billion in assets and should be taxed at 100% after your first billion." End quote. I wonder how the billionaires in the Democratic Party feel about that. More billionaires donated to Kamala Harris and Trump. And here's a short list of some of the more prominent ones. Bill Gates from Microsoft. Is he going to give back his billions? He gave over $50 million to a nonprofit supporting the Harris campaign. Michael Bloomberg. He gave over $100 million to Democratic candidates. Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, Reid Hoffman, Jamie Dimon, to name a few. The truth is the big money donors in politics are all now siding with the Democrats. And are they going to give up their billions because this young whippersnapper says you don't deserve that money? Mr. Hogg has also called for defunding the police and abolishing ICE. Not exactly in the mainstream these days. He's also made it clear that he never plans on having children, and owning a Porsche would be cheaper and better for the environment. Quoting him again, he said, "In the long term, it's cheaper, better for the environment, and it will never tell you that it hates you or ask you to pay for college." End quote. You got to wonder where he comes up with this stuff. So I ask you, is that what you want leading your party, Democrats? Some Gen Z idiot that does not want to have any children and would prefer to drive a Porsche? Wonder how that will resonate with auto workers in Michigan. I don't think they make them there. Mr. Hogg epitomizes the white liberal elites that have flocked to the Democratic Party without any understanding of what middle Americans and millions of voters in those states care about. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, I would recommend you go over and find me on YouTube. That's the best place to see it.